Totally.
Let's make a quick distinction between creating, manifesting intentionally, and then kind of like through your default distortion patterns.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because whether we're aware of it or not, we're all creating all the time, right? So we can do it unconsciously, right? That's what you're referring to. So let's just say that you haven't been exposed to frequency work and you're having kind of a crappy experience of your life and your life kind of isn't great. You are creating more of that life because you're you're imprisoned basically by your distortion patterns. And so what your thoughts and your emotions are and your circumstances are a reflection of those distortions, and you can't really get out of it. So you're unconsciously creating. Only when you start to release more and more of your distortion patterns do you have more free will and also more momentum to create consciously, and therefore have an effect in your reality and put yourself into the present moment of linear time and to the 0 point of space, which we've talked about before, which is really critical for creating manifesting. So when you do that, then you're claiming your sovereignty as co-creator, and that's when things can really start to accelerate. So thank you for the question.
I have an example, I think, of what you're talking about. So I have a friend who broke her arm, kind of in a tragic way, but she broke her arm, had to get surgery, broke it again, broke it again, and then like injured it again. Like, would you consider that an example of like some distortion pattern she's running where that's creating her reality and
totally.
It's not conscious?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And also I've worked on a little girl who is about, I mean, she's 9, so obviously she's not like thinking about things necessarily, but she actually injured herself, her head, by running into a sliding glass door, and then she got into a bus, and a couple days later, and smashed, like they had a little fender bender, and she smashed her head exactly in the same place again. And then something else happened where she passed out actually and hit her head exactly in the same place. So constant head trauma. And so exactly in the same place, just like your friend. So when I worked on her, what happened is I had to release the distortion patterns that were causing that repetitive trauma. Has she had any kind of, like, and this happened, like literally all of the sequence of these traumas to the same place happened within a span of 3 weeks. It's a very short period of time. And so once we released it, she hasn't had anything since. Right? The distortion patterns will cause you to cycle and cycle and cycle in the same
And we're talking
pattern.
about physical, but this can even be emotional. You know, people who attract men who beat them, or whatever the thing is.
Oh, totally. Yeah, your distortion patterns create your reality. So
whether you're conscious of it or not.
Not exactly. They will call to you that reality because you're like a beacon running. It's like the distortion patterns are like a radio signal, right? And you're like a package of that, all those signals that are being sent out. And if what you're running is control abuse patterns, guess who's going to show up? Somebody who's going to control and abuse you. And it's weird, you know, Tia, like the guy can start off being non-abusive, non-controlling, and be in your field for enough. And I'm not saying this is like a woman's fault, okay? So please know this. And it's a very touchy thing. But what can happen is he can start to conform to that and become more controlling, more abusive. Not because you're doing anything. So please know, I'm not trying to perpetrate like the victim. Thing. It's just a frequency thing. So it's like until you can release those distortion patterns, the people that you show up in your life will be similar because you keep attracting them. Once you release your distortion patterns, then who comes into your life shifts because you're not running that same signal anymore.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I've noticed that too.
Yeah. And also as your frequency resonance rises, you also start to attract different people of a higher resonating order. They reflect you. So it's really cool. And it's not like, again, you necessarily go out thinking I'm going to like get all these different things from frequency work, but it's this really beautiful natural consequence of releasing distortion patterns and your frequency resonance rising.
Very cool.
So some people, I just want to talk about something that people have some concern about, which is that a lot of people will think, if I have negative thoughts, I have to really watch my thoughts because if I'm too negative, then that's going to create my reality, and they get kind of paranoid around their thoughts. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm just going to address that. So what happens when you are fearful in some way, whether it's worried about what your thoughts will create, or if you're anxious, or if you're like I said, fear, worry, anxiety, really, those things will pull your frequency resonance down. So you're pulling yourself down on the frequency bandwidth that is you. So you're no longer up here anymore, you're dropping your state, okay, in terms of your emotional state, your resonance is low. As a result, really difficult to create from there and have any real positive impact. Also, people who are worrying like that, like, oh my God, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking something bad, etc., and they start to worry, when there's a lot of that worry, it'll time distort them into the future. So now they're not in the present moment and they can't affect their reality as much. Okay, it's really difficult too. So that's why like worry can be really, and that distortion around fear around what you're thinking can really pull your resonance down. Okay, so just be aware that that's what it is. So it's better, instead of just focusing on what you're worried on, which is hard to like shift your focus, right? Like if you're like concerned about something, it's to just, you can do something either to move. Okay, so to like take yourself on a walk, you know, to change like where you are a little bit, that will help you, especially if you're going out to nature. It gives you a different kind of perspective. If you journal, if you just let yourself like journal, like free journal for like 5-10 minutes and just sort of get it out onto the page, that also can help shift. And then you can read what you're saying, like, oh, wow. And if you think of it as a perspective of, if this weren't meeting me, like if the words that were written were not me and they were actually a friend reading this to me, what would I say? Like what would be my perspective on that?
Distance.
Gives distance as well. So those kinds of things help when you start to like spin in your mind a bit. Also, if you do frequency work, so if you listen to the GFC, if you do the GFC at the end, that will start to help you so that you won't be so low in the frequency bandwidth.